Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and shout out to all of you who have been following with me on this journey for the last 5 years. And shout out to those of you who have been commenting on my last few videos. If you don't know, I'm currently in the process of boxing up my collection to sell it. I'll be selling off the bulk of my collection. And one of the questions that I get the most is, what games are you planning on keeping? So in this video, I want to just kind of show you guys 3 of the games that are actually going out the door, and I'll be showing you one of the games that'll actually be staying in my collection. And this might be something that I do over the course of the next few days as I kind of just go through this. It'll kind of give you guys a glimpse as to what was in my collection, and also a glimpse as to what's going to stay in my collection and what will become the new foundation for the collection that I rebuild in the future. So gonna go through that here today, and then just talk a little bit about the rationale behind what I'm deciding to keep. So the first game that I'll showcase here, these are 3 games that are actually going to be sold. And disclaimer, yes, my hands are ashy because I like to wash my hands and keep my hands clean when I'm touching video games. And putting lotion on when you're about to touch video games, to me, just isn't wise. I'd rather have dry hands than oily hands and have oily hands on the games. So yeah, if you don't like ashy hands, click off now. Anyway, so the first game that's going to be going, or one of the games that's going to be going rather, is House of the Dead on the Sega Saturn. Now, I have been a fan of the House of the Dead. I played games like House of the Dead and Area 51 in the arcades back in the day. It's basically a light gun game, or like a light gun shooter style game. I felt like these games played the best in the arcades, and the Sega Saturn honestly was one of the best, and is, in my opinion, still one of the best consoles for bringing that retro, like 90s, early 2000s arcade feel into your home. The only thing is that, just this game in particular, I just never really had the time to dive into it too deep on the Sega Saturn. But this is a very, very cool game. One that's really kind of hard to find. I don't really see House of the Dead that often out in the wild. And so this copy was one that I actually picked up from Retro Games Plus, which is I think they're a chain. I know that they've got stores in Connecticut. They've also got stores in California, but this was a game that I traded for a long time ago. So this is one that's actually going to be going out the door. A really cool part of the collection. The one that I, have been hanging on to just because I know how hard it is to find. And I really had hopes of really building up my Sega Saturn collection a little bit more. But if it's meant to be in my collection again in the future, I will find another copy. But this one is going out the door. Okay, next up, so Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. So this was one of the few, I think this is the only GameCube game that I kept in some like plastic wrap, and I think that was just by default, just because I think this is how I got it, and so I just left it in this little plastic wrap. But many of you know about Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. It's one of the more, I guess, expensive games on the GameCube. It's an RPG. It's a classic RPG. And my favorite thing about Fire Emblem is Ike. I used to use Ike a lot in Super Smash Bros. Was it Brawl? Yeah, on the Wii. So I used a ton of Ike. This is a cool one. I was not married to the GameCube. The GameCube wasn't necessarily... It's crazy because I had a GameCube growing up. Like, I got a GameCube my sophomore year it was sophomore year? I think sophomore year in high school. I got a GameCube. I got the black one. The first 2 games I got for the GameCube were Star Fox Adventures and Batman Vengeance. Played those games a ton, and then I think I got Smash Bros. Melee a little bit after, because that's the game that all my friends were playing, and I wanted to be competitive whenever we got together. And it's funny, despite me actually having the GameCube as a kid, I am not married to it. It's not a console that I feel like a ton of nostalgia for. I collected for it because there was a point where the hype was crazy and I wasn't really collecting GameCube games. I think my GameCube collection was probably really small. I maybe had 6 games in my GameCube game collection. But as the GameCube hype started to die down, more and more GameCube games became available. I just started seeing them pop up in, you know, different mom and pop shops, and then also they became really accessible on GameStop's website. And so I would just start finding a ton of GameCube games in GameStop, and I would say like 80% of my GameCube game collection, completed box collection at that, came from GameStop, including games like Chibi Robo, Pokemon Gale of Darkness, Pokemon Stadium, or Pokemon, not Stadium, Pokemon Coliseum. So a lot of the really like heavy hitting GameCube games I actually got from GameStop, and I bought a lot of them during the buy two get one. So, you know, Path of Radiance is a cool one, and I'm sure this will be one that I'm sure someone will enjoy, especially in this condition. This is a really good condition copy. But this is one of those ones that I don't feel too bad about letting go. So this one is actually going to be going out of the collection with the sale. And then the last but not least is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is a Dreamcast fighter. I actually have this game on the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 1, ironically. I got the PlayStation version like a year ago this time, well, close to this time. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is really cool. You know, it's a cool fighter. I think they remade this on like the PlayStation 4. I don't know if it plays exactly the same way as it does like on the Dreamcast and PlayStation, but this game has very much late 90s, early 2000s arcade fighter vibes between the music, the graphics, the pixelation, the animation. A very beautiful fighting game for sure. No matter how many times I've played this, and I've put it in my Dreamcast and played it a number of times, it could just be that I'm just so used to the movesets in Marvel vs. Capcom that I could just never really get comfortable with the movesets in this game. But nevertheless, it is a pretty cool fighter. It's one that I remember from back in the day, and so I definitely had this as a part of my Dreamcast collection. Again, very clean copy, very good copy, but this is another one that's going to have a great home, you know. So if there's a Dreamcast collector out there, hopefully they will be able to enjoy this copy. Now, when it comes to the game, one of the games that I'm keeping, because I know this is something that you guys have been asking me about. You want to know, hey, Y2K, what do you plan on keeping? Are you selling everything? I'm not selling absolutely everything out of my collection. There are games that I'm going to be keeping, and here's one of them. Hyperduel. So Hyperduel is definitely going to be a game that I keep in my collection. This will become the new bedrock, the new foundation of the collection that I build in the future. This is my favorite shoot 'em up of all time. I have a lot of shoot 'em ups that I would say are my favorites, but Hyperduel is my absolute favorite. I've never played another shoot 'em up quite like this game. I have video footage of this on my channel and videos from way back. Just a very unique shoot 'em up. The fact that you can go through each level, converting between a fighter jet and a mech, you know, a mech warrior style, with different range of attacks and weapons. You don't necessarily get a bomb in this game, but you do get like a supercharged attack, kind of like how you have in Blazing Star, where in Blazing Star, I don't think you necessarily get a bomb, but you do get like these max power-ups where you're just, you know, your weapons are just supercharged and just delivering devastating damage. At least I think that's Blazing Star. I might be wrong. I'm looking at a ton of games right now, so if I get something off, please forgive me. But and then also one of the best parts about Hyperduel is that it's one of the few shoot 'em ups where you get you get NPCs that fly alongside you. They fly with you and actually fight on your behalf. I think you get that in some of the Darius Gaiden games, I think, or at least one of them. I know you can like grab one of the enemy fighters and then like turn them into an ally who fights for you, or at least protects or takes damage for you, I think. But in Hyperduel, you get to have up to 2 NPCs that fight alongside you, and they can either be a miniature jet or a miniature mech fighter, which is really cool, because they can take damage for you. They can obviously fight for you. In parts of the game where it gets really tight, you know, you kind of want to have them as a shield, as a buffer. You also want them, you know, watching your back if enemies are coming from behind. So Hyperduel is just a classic shooter, and I wouldn't be shocked if eventually this game got a re-release on the Switch, right? They've already brought the Dodonpachi games to the Switch. They've already brought Radiant Silvergun to the Switch. They've already brought so many, classic import shooters to the Switch that I would not be shocked if Hyperduel eventually made its way. I don't know what's holding it back, but if this does make its way to the Switch, it will be an instant digital download because I probably won't get the physical version, at least not right now. So Hyperduel is definitely one that's going to be in my collection. And as I go through this process, I'll show you guys some of the games that I plan on keeping. Again, not everything is being sold, but with a collection of over 11 to 1200 games, the bulk of it is being sold. The majority of it is being sold. I may keep about 10% or less of the overall collection, and honestly, a lot of that is just going to be based on a few things: the games that I enjoyed the most, the games I enjoyed playing the most, and also the games that were probably the most difficult for me to find. There are some games that I have in my collection that don't have very many comps anywhere, like you can't find them in most video game stores, and there aren't a lot of options for them online either. And I'll show you some of those games as I go through this over the next few days. But what games that come to my mind immediately are games like Rapid Reload. Rapid Reload is a game that I don't see a lot of copies of online, at least not complete, and it's just a very hard game to find. Another game like that would be a game like Silent Bomber. Silent Bomber is just extremely hard to find, and it's a game that I really enjoy playing on the PlayStation. R-Type Delta, SWAT Cats. These are games that are just really, really hard to find, or at least they were hard for me to find. I don't know, they might be easier for someone else to find, but these are the games that took a lot of time for me to find and add to my collection. So because I do plan on rebuilding a collection in the future, that's a big part of the reason why some of those might be a little bit tougher to add in. Overall, like I said, whoever gets the collection is still going to be hit with a ton of really good stuff. It's really, really cool. Something that I'm working on. So more to come on that. Also, when it comes to the channel, I'm really considering different ideas for how I want to pivot with the channel. One of the ideas that I've been toying with is finally making a like an avatar. I know a lot of you guys have mentioned that, hey, you said, hey, Y2K, why don't you just make like an avatar since you don't want to do talking head videos? And I think I may implement that into videos in the future, especially as we dig into like other topics. One of the things that I want to talk about are some of the tools that I used in my collection, different screwdrivers and different tools that I used to verify games and make sure that games were working. Also, some of the tools that I used to do minor soldering on games that were broken, like cartridge-based games that didn't necessarily work too well. A lot of you guys saw the video where I repaired my copy of Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy Color. It wasn't working, but it just needed a little bit of soldering, and I got a soldering iron and actually was able to get the game to work again. So just some more topics like that, I think that might be relevant to followers of the channel. But sometimes, it might be easier to kind of have like that little talking head avatar for the parts of the video that don't necessarily show some of the work that I'm doing or some of the items that I'm talking about. So there's going to be some experimentation on the channel over the next few days to weeks. And, to anyone who sticks around, I really appreciate you guys a ton. Transition is exciting. I've been getting a lot of I'm sorries, and I appreciate the I'm sorries, but really this is an exciting time for me. It's an exciting time for my family. And I'm really excited about the opportunities in the future that's coming my way. Obviously, no one wants to sell their collection. If you can hold out for sure, you want to hang on to your collection as much as you can. But it's a really great opportunity. One of the comments that I got on my last video was someone asked me to kind of explain the reason for the selling of the collection, if it was space, money, what reason for the sale, for the sudden sell off. And a lot of it is a combination of space and transition, right? Space is going to be a factor during during this transitional period. I'm going to be, doing moving some things around, um, with different properties, and then also just moving, right? Moving with a large collection is difficult, especially if you're going to be in transition for a period of time. If you're moving from point A to point B and it's a definitive move, then that's one thing, because you would just box up your collection, hold it until you're ready to move it to the new location, and then unpack it and set it all up again, which is something that I've done before. If you follow the channel, you'll know that I used to shoot my videos in a completely different space. My game room was in a completely different space before. And then around 2024-ish, 2023, we changed locations and I moved my whole collection to a different space. So this isn't that. This is kind of like it's kind of like a moving target that we're working on right now. And then it's also a much greater distance. So when you're moving, especially if you're moving around the country, it's a little bit harder to kind of be agile when you have that much stuff. And so this isn't a process of just selling off the game collection. This is a overall process of just simplifying my life, really going to a minimalist mode of life. So not just like getting rid of video games, but also clothes that you don't need. If you have a bunch of sweaters that you don't wear anymore, it's time to donate those to the Salvation Army. If the kids have a bunch of toys that they don't play with anymore, it's time to donate those items and get rid of those items. If you have a juicer that you haven't used in 6 years, it's time to donate the juicer. So there's a whole decluttering process happening in my family's life right now, which includes all types of stuff, right? So we're going to be donating a bunch of stuff. We're going to be selling a bunch of stuff. As you see, I'm selling a bunch of the collection, but this is just an overall simplification of life. And I'll be honest with you, there's something very freeing and liberating about decluttering and letting go of stuff. You know what I mean? Who is it? Yoda? Who is it? Was it Yoda that said, I think it was either in Star Wars or it was Robert De Niro in Heat, where they said never get so attached to something that you can't, like, if you feel the heat coming, you can't leave it in 5 seconds flat. And I think there's something very freeing when you break attachments to things and you kind of simplify your life. It kind of allows you to think more clearly, and it also allows you to react a lot faster to things, which I think is going to be important. It's going to be important, especially with where just the world is going. Things are changing. The world is changing. And again, these are topics that we'll dive into a little bit more in detail as, the channel grows and evolves, and we start to talk about some of these topics. But even something as simple as AI and artificial intelligence, I don't think a lot of people realize how much AI is going to impact everything that we do, and just the way that we live. And there are billions and trillions of dollars being pumped into AI. Now, granted, a lot of the money that's being pumped into AI from a institutional investor level, a lot of it is building up what I feel is an AI bubble. And now we're getting into finances, which is another thing we'll talk about on the channel. But I think there is definitely an AI bubble being built up, from what we're seeing in just the investments that's being made into like companies like Nvidia and things of that nature, OpenAI, stuff like that. And we're very early with AI. If you listen to a lot of like CEOs and stuff like that, they'll make you think that AI is here. AI is not here yet, not in the functional way that we anticipate it to be 5 to 10 years from now. A lot of people use Gemini and they think, well, AI is here. Gemini is like the Atari version of what AI will become. Like where we're at with AI is like where we were with like the Atari, right? By the time we get to like the Super Nintendo level of AI, it is drastically going to change the way we live. And then by the time we get to like the PlayStation 3 era of AI, oh man, forget it. It's, think Tony Stark, think Jarvis, think, think iRobot, think all those movies that you've seen, Terminator, maybe not Terminator right away, but that's where we're headed. So, and I think just keeping that in mind, the more agile you can be, the more free you can be, the more adaptable you can be, not just as an individual, but with your family. You know what I mean? If you have a family, I think the better positioned you'll be. So I say all that to say that this is a good thing. This is a great opportunity. And I appreciate all of you who have been tapping in and are tuning in. A lot more to come. And yeah, more videos on just showing you guys what's going and what's staying. I'll be keeping in touch. But until then, you guys have a great Sunday. I'll catch you in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.